The Kami-E technique allows the body to achieve maximum flexibility and evasion, but at the same time the body's defensive capabilities are sharply weakened. Erika knew this, so she attacked decisively. If she had hit, it would have probably left a wound on her chest, but at the same time, Louis's body would have been pierced. Naive, Louis chuckled, loosening his right leg slightly, causing it to instantly return to its original position, thereby capturing Erika's right hand. Damn it. Erika gritted her teeth, but no matter how hard she tried, her hand was tightly clamped, and there was no way to move it. That's all, Louis said, partially bringing his body out of the Kami-E state, which also reduced its elasticity. Quadruple A. Erika screamed as she felt whatever was holding her limbs began to tighten, forcing her right arm to go behind her back, simultaneously dislocating her shoulder joint. In addition, her chest began to convulse, and her ribs began to make characteristic cracking sounds. Die! She screamed, still struggling. And opening her mouth wide, she tried to bite Louis's head. How stubborn, Louis said, and without paying attention to it, he returned his right hand to its usual appearance. Poof. Asterisk. Ooh. Erika's voice became slurred and one of her hands reached up to her face, trying to free herself from the shackles. Still not giving in, Louis continued, while tightening his grip, each time she exhaled, increasing the pressure he was putting on her. Soon her face turned red and her consciousness began to fade. And thus, accompanied by extremely difficult breathing, Erika lost consciousness and their fight ended. Louis released Erika's body, completely breaking out of his Kami-E state. He frowned slightly, feeling an unusual sensation. His body was clearly out of order, and his muscles felt stretched. These injuries were not serious, but they showed that this technique was not suitable for long-term use. In addition, during the fight, he realized that using binding for strangulation was too ineffective, so he abandoned this tactic. Although it only took him a week to master Kami-E, his training did not end there. Over the next 3 weeks, Louis began trying to strengthen Kami-E and expand its range of application. There were 2 directions of strengthening. The first is to increase control, so that he could, for example, wrap himself around Erika's body like a snake. It is worth noting that the usual Kami-E is like paper, soft, but does not allow you to arbitrarily change shape. The second direction is to increase the strength of his body in the Kami-E state, so that he can quickly deprive Erika of the state. Of course, binding is not the main function of this technique. Louis just wanted to see if he could do something like this. In fact, he learned this technique to combine it with Tekai techniques, but what he learned in the fight today was also extremely useful. After all, now he could say with certainty, no chains or prisons could hold him. Wow. Unbelievable. This is simply amazing, meow, Shiro marveled as soon as Louis stepped out of the arena. This is Kami-E. This looks more like a devil fruit ability. How is this possible? This is simply unimaginable, meow. Louis, you are simply amazing, defeating Erika so easily, meow. Just luck, Louis dismissed. Luck? Can you call that luck, meow? Shiro laughed. Erika is too stupid to jump into your arms. And as we all know, intelligence is also part of strength, meow. Louis responded to this with a simple smile. If Erika really relied on Sora to increase the distance and used offensive tactics, he would probably have to use Seimei Kiken to attack. As for the difference in their Doriki, it was not that great. In addition, after a month of intensive training, his physical strength had increased significantly, and Louis's improvement was definitely greater than Erika's. And thanks to his superiority in Rokushiki techniques, he had no reason to doubt his victory. In any case, the practical exam came to an end, and Louis passed to the next stage. As for the results of the theoretical test, they were known by the evening. And in the end, John, who had received a serious injury from Shiro and was still unconscious, became the first to be thrown out of the camp with 0 points for the practical and average points for the theory. Since then, no one has seen him. And so the second month began, in which Louis continued his grueling training. While eating, he continued to use Seimei Kiken, controlling his digestive system. Progress was a little slower than he expected, as the contents of his stomach greatly affected his control. But after about 2 weeks, he managed to master this task. After which, Louis officially entered a period of rapid growth, feeling himself getting stronger every day. After finishing the digestive system, he focused on hair control. There are many hairs on the human body besides the head, such as vellus hair, and it was worth working on them. The experience of hair control sped up the process considerably, and by the end of the second month, Louis could control most of his vellus hair. Besides that, he also did not stop training Rokushiki techniques. Mastering Kami-e could be considered complete, and now he began studying Sora, as he needed to learn the movement skills. Otherwise, he would not have the strength to counterattack against opponents with long-range attacks. The focus of copy training was on explosive power. Louis achieved speed by consistently pushing off the ground in a short time. It was technically much easier than Kami-e, and it was also easy to train. Thus, slowly but surely, the second month came to an end, and the second exam also came to an end. There is no need to talk about the theoretical test, but in practice, Louis faced an opponent whose name he could not even remember. Because using the techniques he had learned, he won instantly. Now, in their training camp, almost everyone agreed that the strongest students were Stuart, Louis, and Shiro, although no one had any hopes for Shiro. During the third month, Louis continued to improve his control over his vellus hair. He had already planned that after he completed this, he would begin working on the skin. And although it would take a long time, it would definitely prove useful to him. Speaking of Soru's training, it was completed, but not finding any complex applications for the technique, he only improved its speed and control, starting to study Geppo. However, at that moment, his calm training was interrupted by the appearance of one person. "Hey, kid, where's the bathroom?" cried a man Louis had never seen before. He stood in front of him with his legs tucked under him, his face as red as a tomato, his body writhing constantly. Louis was surprised by the appearance of this man, and that he burst into his training room. But for some reason, he seemed familiar to him. So, pointing to the toilet, Louis began to sort through his memories of where he could see him. "Ah, how good, finally!" the man exclaimed enthusiastically, leaving the toilet with relief. Walking up to Louis, he looked at him with a slightly surprised expression. "Wow, there are such young guys in the CP9 training camp. Speaking of which, kid, would you like to be friends with me? I'm Spandine, the commander of CP9. After these words, Louis finally remembered where exactly he saw him. Spandine. Louis remembered the name. Over 20 years later, his son, Spandam, would become the head of CP9, as well as a high-profile government official with direct contact with the 5 Redrose. Although, in general, he's just an idiot. But what surprised Louis was that Spandine had already become the leader of CP9. In the original story, the information about secondary characters like him was too superficial to draw any conclusions. In any case, 5 years later, during the Ohara incident, Spandine was already the leader of CP9, but whether he was the leader 5 years ago is a question. "Hey, don't you believe me?" Spandine said rudely, showing no respect, more like a second or third-rate pirate than someone of such a high position. "Hey, bastard, I'm talking to you, do you doubt my words?" "No, not at all," Louis replied calmly, "your presence here fully speaks of your status, Commander." "Ha ha ha, that's right, Spandine smirked smugly, showing his teeth in a wide grin. Louis thought that if he became part of CP9, having such an idiot as a commander could be quite useful, and it wouldn't be hard to suppress him if necessary. "Hey kid, what's your name?" Spandine asked with interest. "You look so young, how old are you?" "My name is Louis, Commander. And I'll be 13 next month," Louis replied, not sounding particularly respectful, though Spandine didn't seem to notice. What, 13? Spandine exclaimed, clearly amazed by what he heard. "Are you some kind of miracle, boy? 13 years old, and already in a place like this?" "Let me clarify, Commander," Louis said seriously. "I am the most outstanding of the students." "Oh." Spandine's eyes lit up. "Boy, show me around this training camp, this is my first time here." For the first time, Louis thought about how it looked like Spandine had just been assigned to CP9. "Okay, Commander," Louis nodded in agreement. Even if Spandine wasn't a commander yet, he could still prove useful in the future. And it never hurt anyone to maintain a good relationship with someone with such strong connections. By this time, it was already night, but the training camp was still brightly lit. For everyone gathered here, this time was still considered early, and among them were those who had trained all night long. After all, if you don't want to be expelled, you have to train hard. This was the general opinion of everyone in this camp. Wow, this is so cool. This place is absolutely gigantic. Much bigger than the training camp in CP5. Spandine exclaimed, still showing no manners for someone with such a high position. CP5. After hearing Spandine's words, Lewis concluded that he had previously been at the CP5 training camp. Wow, what a beauty. Spandine suddenly froze, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. Lewis had never seen such a strange expression on his face before. Spandine looked exactly like in the cartoons, with bulging eyes and a faint drool dripping from his mouth. Beauty. Erica walked out of the training room holding a towel in her hand, simultaneously wiping away the sweat from her recent training session. Commander, she's just a loser, Lewis said calmly, trying to distract Spandine from Erica. Loser. Dude, you just don't know what real life is. Calling such a beauty a loser. As he said this, Spandine looked like a real pervert, and Erica, clearly noticing this, moved angrily towards him. Who? Spandine froze, watching as Erica, without giving him a chance to explain, pointed her fist at him. Lewis, who was standing next to her, calmly intercepted her blow and said, Erica, please calm down, this person Spandine is the head of CP9. Hearing this answer, Erica smiled contemptuously and turned to leave. Ha! That girl. Spandine, still shocked by what just happened, grabbed Lewis by his clothes, shouting, Hey! Lewis, you said she was a loser. Kill her. Kill her. Alright, no, don't kill her. Spandine's face instantly changed, and he said with admiration, this wild character even adds to her beauty. Commander, if you want to court her, you should pay attention to one thing. Lewis casually remarked, this girl is one of those who are undergoing training at this training camp. And perhaps she will become part of CP9 in the future. Do you really want to lose her? Spandine was confused. Moreover, Commander, are you really interested in the women of CP who only think about training? Lewis asked with a smile. Yeah, you're right, these damn training. It seemed like Lewis's words had an effect on Spandine, and he realized something, but is it possible to just let her go like that? Take your time, Commander, Lewis continued, think about it, once she's an official part of CP9, you'll be able to control her. And if she's not, then there's nothing to talk about at all, not even revenge, because she'll be dealt with without us. Great. Lewis, you're a very smart kid. Spandine nodded, this training camp is still that bastard's property after all. Okay, let's give the damn girl some time. Lewis then proceeded to show Spandine the base, and this continued until they were stopped by a group of people in black suits. Mr. Spandine, please don't do as you please, they said, but there was no particular politeness in their tone either. You are disturbing us. Hey, you bastards, are you going to give me orders? Spandine said angrily. Okay, Mr. Spandine, please come with us. We have prepared the ship for the morning, you should rest, one of the men added, we have also delivered a real beauty to your room. Ooh. Spandine's face instantly changed, and he muttered with a sly smile. Ha ha ha, and you guys know what a person needs, well done. It's quite funny how easy it was to fool him. Lewis sighed. See you in CP9, kid, Spandine said, impatiently bidding Lewis farewell. Commander, Lewis stepped closer and spoke into his ear, I heard you used to work for CP5. I have a friend who is currently in CP5, and I hope. He talked about Dylan. No problem, nothing, Spandine answered readily. Trust me, CP5 are my people. Well, goodbye then, Lewis smiled. Bye, goodbye, Spandine waved impatiently and left, followed by men in black suits. One of them looked at Lewis before leaving, showing with his eyes that he had done something he shouldn't have. Ha ha ha, now you're in big trouble, Lewis. Shiro said, suddenly appearing out of nowhere with obvious excitement in his eyes. Why? Lewis thought and asked again, because he needed to find out the details. Lewis, don't you know yet? Shiro answered his question with great pleasure. Spandine was the head of CP5 until recently, and now he's been transferred to CP9 as a deputy. It seems like they want to promote him to the head of CP9. I don't understand what they're thinking at all. How could such a guy end up at the top of CP? Technically, although CP0 still bears the name CP, it is a separate organization that does not belong to the CP series. While CP1 to 9 are under the world government, CP0 is directly under the Heavenly Dragons. To differentiate, the leader of CP0 can tell the Admiral what to do. Because of this, given that CP0 and the entire CP series are almost torn apart, CP9 naturally becomes the top of the entire structure. The CP9 commander is effectively the head of the CP, as official CP9 members have the power to manage other CP members. Therefore, the idea of appointing Spandine as the head of CP9 has raised eyebrows among many. It's enough for the agents to be smart and capable, Lewis casually remarked, but the commander just needs to obey. By the way, isn't the current commander like that? That I don't know. Shiro shrugged. But the current commander certainly doesn't want to give up his position so easily. So, Lewis, what do you think he'll think if he sees that there's a student in the training camp who gets along well with Spandine? Try to guess. Lewis smiled. Guess. Guess what? Shiro was surprised. Guess what the current commander would think if he saw one of the students at camp getting along well with Spandine? Lewis replied. Hey. Shiro froze. Hey. ... The training life continued in the same spirit. Lewis was not too worried about the possible attention from the current commander of CP9. What was going to happen, would happen sooner or later. There was no point in worrying about it, the most important thing for him now was to become as strong as possible. The third month came to an end, and as expected, exams began. Lewis easily defeated his extra opponent and took first place in the overall result, which allowed him to continue training at the camp. He had completed sweat control training last month, but he was still having trouble with skin control. It would take him at least a few months to complete the process, but after that, changing his appearance and age would be much easier. Lewis has mastered 4 of the 6 techniques: Tekai, Kami-e, Shave, and Geppo. As for Renkyaku training, thanks to the accumulated experience from Copy and Geppo training, he is approaching its completion. Although he did not attach much importance to it, thinking that it could only be useful for fighting small opponents. The greatest progress, in his opinion, was made in basic combat skills. After mastering the control of the digestive system, his ability to digest and assimilate food increased significantly. And now even 50 portions in one go are not enough for him. Because of this, the cooks of the canteen were forced to start developing special high-calorie dishes for him. Of course, to compensate for the increase in appetite, his body rapidly became stronger. The meat of this world is full of energy, and even ordinary people who eat it for a long time become stronger. What can we say about Lewis, who can overeat and digest it for days? Although he hadn't taken the Doriki measurement test, he estimated that his level was probably at least 900 or 1000 right now. And currently in the camp, only Stuart and Shiro could surpass him in Doriki level. Lewis also turned 13 this month. And with that, he began new classes. Combat training classes were cancelled and replaced by paired combat classes, where students could train with each other or with instructors. Lewis chose one of the instructors, believing that he had a lot of combat experience. However, he soon realized that the instructor was not as strong as expected. Morning classes also entered a new phase, and Lewis received a notification that he needed to undergo training at one of the specially prepared locations. Special techniques of covert penetration and interrogation, as well as methods of countering interrogations, moving towards the place. Lewis repeated the name of the course, heard the day before from the instructor, over and over again, as if it meant something. He walked up to see Erica holding the door handle, her face pale as if she was afraid to open the front door. Seeing Lewis, she turned around and gave him a furious look that radiated aggression, as if he had caught her doing something he shouldn't have. Creak. But then, overcoming her fear, she creaked the door open and walked inside. Oh, what a lovely young man. When he entered the room, Lewis saw a beautiful woman sitting at the table, her legs crossed, painting her nails. When she saw Lewis, she was delighted and shouted, "What happiness! Is this the same course?" Lewis began to understand what was meant by the phrase, special methods. "You're Lewis, right?" The woman asked with a smile. "You're perfect for this course." She stood up, came closer to him, and began to carefully study his face. Although he was still young, he was already incredibly handsome. Haha, if you study well with me, little handsome, then this knowledge will become your most powerful weapon. Yes, ma'am, Louis nodded. Oh, calling me ma'am is not romantic at all, the woman said, waving her hand. Just call me Anna. I will teach you well, Anna said, licking her lips, how to use your physiological advantages and how to resist. She leaned towards Louis, whispering in his ear, attracting the opposite sex. And don't worry, it gets easier with practice. Louis slowly began to understand why Erica looked so pale. He thought that it would clearly be difficult for her to undergo such training. So another month of training passed. Anna was an excellent teacher, teaching Louis all the subtleties of interaction with the opposite sex, as if it were a course in seduction. And finally, the time for exams came again. The enemy steward. Shiro exclaimed. No. This is a failure. Erica, your opponent is Louis. Meanwhile, Louis's opponent was also determined, causing the pale and exhausted Erica to look at him in horror. There she goes again. Louis shook his head slightly. Because of the recent courses, Erica hasn't been feeling her best lately. Unlike the men, she's taking courses meant for women, which clearly doesn't bring her any pleasure. This could be seen from her increasingly gloomy gaze. Due to her unstable emotions, she had seriously injured her opponent during the training the day before yesterday, causing him to be forced to miss the opportunity to take the exam. And if nothing changed, this unfortunate man would bid farewell to CP9. Come on, Louis, you can do it. Shiro shouted, cupping his hands in the shape of a megaphone. Destroy her. Give up, Louis said, looking at Erica, who was standing in front of him, and not paying attention to Shiro's scream. You can't defeat me. Louis had easily defeated her a few months ago, and now the difference in their strength had become even more noticeable. Without deigning to answer her opponent, Erica only clenched her fists tighter, glaring at Louis. Seriously. But realizing that she wasn't going to give in, Louis nodded. I see. Start. Under the instructor's command, Erica soared into the air using Geppo. In the blink of an eye, her athletic body soared to the sky, and learning from the past, she decided to distance herself from Louis. Louis looked closer and noted to himself, no improvement. It seems that Erica's skill in this technique has remained at the same level as it was a few months ago. Shoo, shoo, shoo. While above the ground, Erica swung her legs, releasing many blades of compressed air towards Louis, resembling crescent moons. Rankyaku. That explains a lot. Louis nodded, realizing that having learned from her defeat, Erica had learned that she should keep her distance and use long-range attacks. And it's worth saying that her mastery of this technique is at a fairly high level. However, boom, boom, boom. The swift blades enveloped Louis, and their powerful blows tore apart the ground around them. What? That's it. At that moment, Stuart exclaimed from below, does he only train Kami E? Louis's performance was astounding. He didn't dodge Erica's attacks at all. Instead, all of her blows flew past him without touching him. It wasn't because she missed, but because his body was constantly twisting, dodging every gust of air. It looks like that's it. Louis's body, which had just resembled paper, returned to normal. Well then. Swoosh. His figure disappeared in an instant, and only gusts of air could be heard. What a great execution, Geppo. The instructor standing outside exclaimed admiringly. This guy. Although they both used Geppo, the difference in execution was striking. With incredible control and combination with other techniques, Louis's speed reached its limit. Everything in his field of vision became indistinct, and Erica's body was at arm's length. Go to hell. Rankyaku. Erica screamed as loud as she could, and began swinging her legs so fast that they began to resemble shadows. This showed how much strength she had put into this attack. Boom. A real storm of blades erupted in the air, which should not have left Louis with a single chance. Kami E, wind controller. Louis felt the wind around him. His hair, thanks to the Seimei Kiken, was especially sensitive, and he could clearly feel any gust or breeze. Following the wind, his body distorted, and he turned into a black line that quickly penetrated the whirlwind of Erica's attacks. This is the end. He quickly flew out from under the attack, rising slightly higher than Erica, and his right leg rose high above her head. Tekka. Phew. The right leg quickly rushed down, heading straight for Erica's head. Because of which, she was forced to raise both hands. To defend herself, not sitting idly by. Boom. Erika was hit in the head, and her body crashed into the ground like a projectile, leaving behind a massive crater and a cloud of dust. What just happened? Came the conversations from outside the arena. Didn't Erika block the attack? Why was he able to get it? No wonder Lewis is so strong. Shiro smiled, slightly opening his eyes. That's power. That's Kami-e. Stuart gritted his teeth and said, the moment she blocked his strike, he used Kami-e on the part of his leg that hit Erika. What? Partial use of Kami-e. At such a critical moment. It looks like he used Tekai and Kami-e at the same time. Two completely opposite techniques at the same time. It's incredible. A real monster. This guy. Listening to those around him, Stuart looked at Lewis in bewilderment. On what grounds? At that moment Lewis heard Erika scream, and looking down, he noticed that she still hadn't lost consciousness. Bleeding, she held him tightly by the leg of his pants with a wild expression on her face. Why did men decide that they can humiliate women? Why should the fate of women depend on men? She spoke as if she had a tragic story that caused her trauma. You're wrong, Lewis said, pushing her hand away and getting blood on his face. It seems these pants are no longer suitable. During my time on the streets, I realized that in this world there is no difference between men and women, only between the strong and the weak. After these words, Erika froze. The winner is Lewis. The battle came to an end. And then there were several fights of little significance, where the weak fought each other. Then came the long-awaited moment, the confrontation between Shiro and Stuart. Stuart had been considered the strongest in the training camp for months. A few days ago, he tested his strength privately with his instructor. His Doriki were 1300, making him invincible. Rumor has it that he has already mastered 4 of the 6 Rokushiki techniques, and has no weak points. But Shiro was no easy opponent either. He had yet to show a single technique and was always tipsy. However, in all previous exams, those who faced him were eliminated in the first round. And without the ability to continue further fights, they ended up receiving 0 points. Ah, Mr. Stuart, Shiro said with a pained expression on his face, please give me a chance. Lewis has never lost before, and I don't want to lose either. How about $1 million belly after the fight? No need, Stuart replied with a grin. Better save it for medical expenses, I guarantee you'll need it. Stuart was never generous, regardless of strength, power, reputation or talent. He always sought to be first, not accepting other results. What a pity, Shiro said, tugging at his hair. Listen, Shiro said without finishing, originally, I wanted to keep a little secret before the fight with Lewis, you understand. I know that men with secrets are the most attractive. But, Mr. Stuart, you know that you can't beat me without trying. Besides, I don't want to lose to Lewis on the scoreboard without ever fighting him. Oh, how you disturbed me, Mr. Stuart. I even got a little angry, so don't cry later, Shiro added at the end. Shiro laughed, showing a warm smile that was completely different from his usual fake smile, haha. Seeing this, the veins on Stuart's forehead bulged. He clenched his fists and suddenly burst out laughing too. Interesting. Shiro, you're really funny. But don't worry, your fears are in vain. You will lose here, and yet, he smiled widely, and his snow-white teeth and smile made him look like a madman. I will help you defeat Lewis. What did you say? Shiro was clearly surprised by what he heard. Repeat what you just said. I said you're going to lose to me. Stuart repeated, you're done for, Shiro. If you're done with empty talk, the instructor interjected, then let's get started. Shiro versus Stuart, the fight has begun. You say you'll defeat Lewis. Shiro raised his head and smiled, but nothing you said made me more angry than that. Nonsense. Stuart chuckled and attacked him with shave. He quickly rushed forward and raised his right leg and used Tekai. Guillotine. Boom. The arena, already destroyed from the previous fight between Lewis and Erika, began to acquire even more cracks, and huge craters formed under Stuart's feet. What? Stuart was confused, and Shiro disappeared from his sight. Have you mastered copy well? Shiro's voice was heard from behind. Let's see who's faster. That fat guy. Stuart turned around with a sneer on his face. Seriously, he's the best at shave. Yes. Shiro tilted his neck. This is exactly what I'm best at. Whistle. Stuart's body disappeared from sight. Hee. Noticing this, Shiro laughed, and his body disappeared after him. Fshu. Their shadows flickered tirelessly across the arena, accompanied by loud blows from their hands and feet. No, it can't be. Shiro can really fight Stuart at this level. How fast? My eyes can't keep up with them. So use copy, will their legs hold up? What nonsense, they are both superhumans with Doriki over 1,000. Lewis was silent, thinking, most likely, Stuart is no match for Shiro. But in that case, how strong is this fat guy? Damn it. The two figures collided again and separated. Stuart's feet left deep marks on the ground, his clothes were torn, and blood was dripping from his lips. Oh, it seems you're not as fast as I thought. Shiro landed calmly, his clothes were also torn, but unlike his opponent, he didn't have a single scratch on him. Lewis is right, the Doriki don't mean anything. I'll kill you. Stuart gave it his all. Shave, Gatling. His two arms became blurry, turning into what looked like a machine gun that was relentlessly attacking Shiro. Listen, Mr. Stuart. Shiro opened his eyes, revealing his golden pupils. In your opinion, who is faster, a human or a cat? After these words, fine hairs began to appear on his face. Shoo shoo. Two rather sharp sounds were heard, and the hands that seemed to be endlessly attacking Shiro were grabbed. What? Stuart exclaimed in horror. It seems the cat is faster after all, said Shiro, who had completely changed by this time. His face was covered in black hair, his nose was more prominent, his ears were large and pointed, and there was white fur on the lower part of his face. His plump body had become noticeably slimmer and longer, and his legs were slightly bent. At the same time, he was holding Stuart's hands tightly with both of his hands. Shiro turned into a big cat. Devil fruit. Stuart couldn't believe his eyes. But it wasn't just him who was shocked, most of the people watching were confused. Lewis knew that devil fruit users were rare, and among the millions of people, there were only a few thousand, which was comparable to people who could use hockey. KRR. Grabbing Stuart's hand, Shiro showed his sharp teeth and bit him on the shoulder. Ah! Stuart yelled, then a look of anger appeared on his face as he drove his knee hard into his opponent's stomach. Shoo! But Shiro instantly disappeared, and a second later appeared on the ground a few meters from Stuart. How slow, Shiro said, almost syllable by syllable, and with such power, you're going to defeat Lewis. Zone. Stuart gritted his teeth, a fruit that turns you into a cat. Lewis was also amazed. Zone is the most suitable type of fruit for close combat martial artists. If Shiro's Doriki were just over 1,000 before, now they were probably 2,000. Or more. Considering all this, not to mention other enhancements, Shiro could very well match weight and get into CP0. Now I'll show you what speed means. Shiro laughed and disappeared completely. What the? Stuart looked at the wound that had suddenly appeared on his chest, not even noticing when it had happened. And Shiro still hadn't shown up. Continuous use of shade. This was the only thought that was spinning in Stuart's head. What nonsense. What's wrong with his reaction? Can his body really cope with such speed? Poof 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 poof. In the blink of an eye, a multitude of wounds appeared on Stuart's body, and the blood flowing out of them instantly turned him red. I told you, I'm great at shave. Shiro's voice was heard from all sides, and wounds continued to appear on Stuart's body. Tekai. Unable to keep up with his actions, Stuart decided to go on the defensive. Shish. The next moment, many sparks began to emanate from his body, but they looked a little brighter than usual. Wow. Tekai. So durable. This is a problem. Then the only thing left is strike. Cat's paw. Shish. A huge wound appeared on Stuart's back, and upon feeling it, he couldn't hold back a scream. His Tekai was pierced due to the colossal difference in the opponent's Doriki. Bang! Shiro finally showed up, put his right hand on Stuart's head and raised it up, slamming it into the ground, creating an even bigger hole. Ah! Stuart could only scream, unable to move. Who are you? Shiro laughed. Do you think you have the right to compete with Lewis? You're just an old rat who thought he could escape from a cat. Whistle. Grabbing Stuart again, he threw him hard into the wall at the edge of the training ground, after which he froze in silence. Next, Shiro straightened up and looked at the surroundings. Everyone remained silent. No one expected the promising Stuart to be defeated so easily. Everyone realized who was truly the strongest in this set. And under the stunned glances directed at Shiro, he extended his right hand, pointing his finger at Lewis. Then, smiling madly, he said, "It's you, Lewis. If you want to read advanced chapters, follow me on Patreon. 30 plus chapters. Patreon.com/yellowmonkey27. Thank you for support and listening to the whole video. If you want to read more chapters for this fanfiction, head over to my Patreon. I have more fanfictions there than I am posting here. I'll also be doing early releases of content there as well.